Open up the webinar. Michelle, I'm going to start with you introducing the HUBZone Council and the webinar. So start with you.
All right. And as she said, I am Michelle Burnett, and I'm the Executive Director of the HUBZone Contractors National Council. I'm so excited to be here today, and I love the topic that we're going to be talking about with charting the course for HUBZone Opportunities. And when we were talking to our lovely partners at Proposal Helper and BidExecs, I was explaining the frustrations and how much work that goes into these businesses trying to respond to proposals and RFIs and like this whole chicken and egg scenario. We all know one of the biggest problems within the HUBZone program is the lack of set-asides. The fact is that the vast majority of the contracting dollars that go towards the HUBZone spend are not set-asides. And they claim that the reason why we don't see these set-asides is because businesses are not responding to the RFIs. Now, personally, I call a little bit of bull. Now, I do think that businesses have become more resistant in responding to RFIs, but I think that that's because when we are creatures of habit, and if you are constantly responding to opportunity alerts and you're never getting feedback, at a certain point, you've got to tell yourself, this is the definition of sanity. I'm doing the same thing. It's not yielding a response. And that at a certain point, you've got to adjust. So the council has been actively talking to a lot of our industry experts and resource partners to try to figure out how can we effectively support these businesses and position them to, one, shape these opportunities when they're on the forecast level and get them to that fruition where we truly start seeing set-asides. We know it's not easy, but we believe that if we work together, we can come up with some effective strategies in order to hold these agencies accountable and increase the number of unique HUBZone set-asides. So that's ultimately our goal. Now, during today's session, our lovely industry experts are going to share with you some of their experiences. Obviously, they've been doing this for a very long time, but the one reason is that they are newly one of our annual sponsors now, and they have offered up to support the council, sharing their expertise on us trying to launch a business development committee to where we can try to collectively come up with a way to strategize and help these businesses. Now, it's still in the early phases, but for those that are not familiar with the council, we are an advocacy organization. We are a member-based advocacy organization that focuses on trying to, as you can see there, increase HUBZone contracting opportunities. Notice that I did not say HUBZone spending, because just increasing the spend, if it's not creating more opportunities for HUBZone businesses, and when I say unique businesses, we want to see the number of individual companies receiving awards go up. We want to see the number of set-asides go up, and we want to see more money flowing into the communities it's intended to support. We actively advocate for legislative policies that will improve the program, because let's get real, there's a lot of things in government contracting that could use a facelift. But at the end of the day, without policy or without advocacy, we're really not going to see any changes. We do work to try to promote economic development, and we try to develop tools and resources in order to allow you to effectively grow your business. A few of which I would love to share with you guys. If we can go ahead to the next slide. These are, the council just finalized our 2024 legislative priorities. And thanks to one of our lovely members, we actually even have some promotional videos that we really would love for the small business community to share. Because in order for us to really make change happen, we need the powers to be to have a good understanding and be held accountable. So the two videos that we've done thus far is related to the HUBZone price evaluation preference at task order and removing the 20% cap. If some of these things that I'm saying don't really sound familiar to you, I encourage you guys to watch these videos because they will assist you with understanding this more on a granular level. Because the reality is there is thousands of areas that should qualify for HUBZone designation, but don't, because there's an erroneous cap that limits it. And that's not fair. These areas are economically impoverished. They've already, from a statutory standpoint, meet the criteria. But because the regulations are tied to something that says no more than 20% of these areas can qualify, they're left out. So I really urge you guys to check out our website, learn more about our legislative priorities. And if you're not a member of the council, we'd love to have you, because the only way change is going to happen is we need those power in numbers, everybody. So if we want to move forward, there's a couple new things that are out that the council has been working on. These actually were designed by some of our very own council members. It's the HUBZone Validator. This is a tool now that is available to all HUBZone council members. And if you go to the website, you can check it out. It'll give you some more information. But now you can upload a spreadsheet and it'll automatically tell you, it'll put it into a nice little spreadsheet. So if you had like 100 addresses, you can scan it, have it scanned, and it'll come out. It'll tell you exactly who's in a HUBZone and who's not. So no more manually entering those addresses. If you have 1 or 2 employees, that's not that big of a deal. But when you get up into the couple hundreds, it becomes very manual. And I definitely see this beneficial for some of our large business partners or people that are looking for areas like you're scanning a lot of addresses. So there's multiple uses for this. Also, that same visionary created us a HUBZone spending tool that is available on our website. It tracks all HUBZone spending, sole sourcing, as well as set aside. So then we can develop patterns and have a greater understanding of how people are soliciting contracts so we can better position ourselves in order to have an effective approach to increase those contracting dollars. We offer a number of other benefits, and if you guys have any questions, I urge you to reach out to me. And then lastly, I just want to make sure everybody knows that if you want to go to the next slide, I think it's the next slide. I'm not sure. The HUBZone Conference. So I really, really hope that I'm going to see all of you guys in July. The National HUBZone Conference is the biggest conference of the biggest HUBZone conference of the year. You do not have to be HUBZone certified to participate. This conference is about networking with your other fellow small businesses, connecting with agencies and primes. We have a lot of workshops and discussions, and I just blindsided our partners, Rena and Kyle, right before this saying, hey, I really think that this type of discussion needs to be had at the conference so we can get some dialogue back from the small business community. But with that said, without further ado, I would like to pass it over to our industry partners. But before I do, I just want to give a special shout out to the HUBZone Council's board chair, Shirley Bailey, who is here with us today. Hopefully she'll be saying a few words later on. I'm not sure if Shirley is on camera still, but just say a little hi and wave. I've asked Miss Bailey to be here with us today because I know she personally was a client of Proposal Helper and BidExecs, so she can speak to the value that they bring. But without further ado, I would like to pass it over to our industry experts because that's who we're all here to see today. But I hope Shirley will stay with us because she'll be a valuable resource to be able to speak from the perspective of an actual business that utilizes these services and, explain like, hey, how did this work?
I'm happy to stay
I'm
on.
going to stop talking now.
Hey, thanks, Michelle. And as you can see here, my name is Kyle Adams. I'm the director of sales here at Proposal Helper and BidExecs. If you have any questions, there's my contact information. Before we get into the reason that we're here, which is charting the course for HUBZone Opportunities, a little bit about us and Proposal Helper and what we do. What do we do? Why are we here? We've been in business for almost over 14 years now, supporting contractors in the pursuit of government contracts. Proposal Helper is a one-stop solution for all your business development and proposal needs. And so that's from lead identification all the way through to proposal submission. We have a solution for you and one certainly for your budget, every budget. So as you can see here, this will kind of give you the idea and the graphic, the vision that we do have a solution for that whole proposal life cycle. We are ISO 9001 certified, which means we're process focused and we have strict proven processes in place for your proposal development, and we follow them. We're also ISO 27001 certified, which means we take your data seriously. Data security is very important to us, just like it is you. And so when it comes to the types of services that we offer, we can manage and run your proposal from kickoff to submission, of course. We can engage the required technical resources, pricing resources, solutioning resources. Again, it's an end-to-end solution that we can offer. But then we can also fill in where you have voids. Address only your gaps, augment the resources that you do have. And that's down to the very intricate levels, outlines, compliance matrices, kickoff packages, kickoff schedules, proposal schedules, editing, formatting or desktop publishing, graphics, content reviews, compliance checks. So I mentioned the services from lead identification all the way through to submission. We also offer business development and capture support services early on, where we combine technology and a human solution. Give me 1 second here. So that's where we combine technology and a human solution, where we identify and qualify opportunities for you based on your past performances, based on your corporate experience and just qualifications, where you've been, where you're at, where you're trying to go. So strategies, we identify the opportunity for you and then provide capture support with the goal of getting you to a well-informed and educated bid or no bid decision. So we're looking at opportunities. And so how do we do that? We're looking at opportunities 12, 18, and sometimes 24 months out. We're identifying incumbent information, identifying key personnel, and then assisting you in responding to RFI, sources sought, responses, which we all know is important to do, but is also time consuming. So let's discuss how we can help you achieve your desired operational growth. Set an appointment today. You have my contact information. If you have any questions, be glad to answer them further. But let's discuss, and I'd be happy to discuss those capabilities specifically with you and discuss how we can fit into your equation. And so a little bit about Proposal Helper. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our CEO, Rina Bhatia.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it. And thank you all for joining. I know you didn't come here to listen to our sales pitch, but it is important that you understand the resources that are available and a uniqueness of our company. One of the things that I really enjoy, and I think that, in my opinion, on the proposal side anyways, that differentiates us is our ability to solution on the technical side to provide you with solution architects and writers. I think that's very unique to our company. I think Kyle mentioned this. We don't use any consultants in our company. We are all employees of the company. So when we solution something for you guys, it's not something that we're going to do for 10 other companies. We do work, if it's an IDIQ, we'll let you know that we're non-exclusive, but other than that, you really have a full proposal team supporting you. And why is that important for a small business? Because you don't have the diversity of skills that are needed. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in proposals, which you can get from us. But also it gives you credibility when you go to the large primes and you're telling them that they should team with you. They want to know that beyond just the past performance or the small business set aside or the HUBZone set aside that you have, that you actually have the infrastructure in place to run a smooth proposal and not bog down their resources. And we certainly can help you with that. Well, without going back into our services here, let me quickly introduce myself again. I'm Rina Bhatia. I'm the CEO of Proposal Helper and BidExecs. As Kyle mentioned, we've been in business for 14 years. My personal experience, I've been in the industry for almost 30 years now, and I've helped and worked with U.S. federal as well as U.S. government overseas and overseas governments. So if you are looking to expand your business as an export-oriented company, you're looking to say, hey, how do I diversify our company? I'd like to go do business overseas. We certainly bring that experience as well. We're not limited to federal. We do state level. We have done local levels, but I will tell you, I think we shine at state and federal level and DoD. And of course, the international bids. With that, let's dive into today's topic. And that's just, it's a broad topic. And one of the things that I had a small business person tell me from Department of Energy that stuck with me for how he said it. It's not what he said, but how he said it that just stuck to me. He said, I want small businesses to walk in with their capabilities and walk out with their socioeconomic set aside, or whatever the socioeconomic set aside category you are in. What does that mean? It means that don't approach and don't assume that because you're HUBZone set aside, that you're entitled to any sort of contract. Remember, the government is going to buy from companies who have demonstrated or who can demonstrate their capability to solve the problem first. You have to solve the mission-oriented problem first, and you so happen to be HUBZone, or you happen to be an 8A, or happen to be some set aside, great. That is helpful. So in order for you to be that successful company, have the capacity and the capabilities, you got to think about what creates foundational success in your business. What we have seen in a lot of small businesses is a reactionary mode. The RFP drops, or it's, hey, it's announced on SAM, and they'll go chase after it. Even worse, they sign up for some paid subscription service, the lead generators, and now they're all excited and they're checking those leads every 5 minutes. 2 weeks into it, they're looking at it once a day. 2 months into it, they're probably dumping those emails into spam. So there's a difference in, when you do your BD, there's a difference between intensity and consistency. And what will set you apart is being consistent, not burning and, getting all hyper in that first week because you signed up for some service and then it fizzles out because business got in the way or life gets in the way. But consistency is what will set you apart and bring success to your business. And part of our BD service is to maintain that consistency. And that's what Kyle was talking about, is we combine the technology with human solutions. We're not lead aggregators. We're not lead generators. We subscribe to many of the paid services ourselves. What we offer you is that human element of being consistent. Let's come up with what is our criteria for bid, no bid, or what is our criteria for a lead to meet our requirements. And then we follow that consistency. We meet with you on a weekly basis. We're discussing strategy on, okay, so we know about this opportunity. It's 60 days, 90 days, 2 years away from RFP dropping. How are we going to capture it? That kind of foundational consistency in your business is what's going to lead to success. We also see that a lot of companies chase after leads because they're just too afraid to walk away. I call that, and I think the term FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. Is every IDIQ that comes out, I have to be on it. Every IDIQ or every opportunity that is HUBZone set aside, I must bid on it. We really say that don't be afraid to walk away. And I think that's one of the reasons why our success rates are with our clients is as high as it is because we're not afraid to tell our client very matter-of-factly that you are chasing after a wrong opportunity. Or we both combined may have spent months doing capture on it and discovered that it is not a good fit, and we should not be afraid to walk away. So build that foundational success, have a consistent BD process in your company, and don't be afraid to walk away from opportunities. Look, there's no shortage of opportunities in the marketplace, right? But does it technically fit your capabilities? Is it a right fit for your company? Not because you have some set aside, but from a technical standpoint, will you be able to deliver? Because the last thing you want to do is win a contract and then not be able to deliver. So what we say and what we help companies do is establish a clear go, no-go criteria. And there needs to be consistency in how you select when you go after opportunities and don't go after it. But don't be afraid to take exceptions, right? Every rule has an exception, but your business should not be run on exceptions. It should be a rare instance of why you are taking exception to your rule, whatever it is that you have established for yourself and your company. Right now, you may be a 1-person company or a 5-10-person company, or you may be the only person responsible for BD. But as you grow, are you able to say, this is how I make my bid, no bid decisions. These are the things I look for. You need to set that criteria. And if you are taking exceptions, you need to document those. Why did you make that exception? And then analyze and figure out, hey, am I taking too many exceptions to my rules Well, in that case, I need to change my rules because I'm just taking, every time there's a opportunity that comes up, I'm trying to find an exception to go after it. So which one is it? Is it fear of missing out? And that's why you keep taking exceptions, or that the rules that you set up for yourselves were too stringent or inappropriate for your business at the stage that it is. I also want to say that the criteria that you set up to go after business opportunities must, not will, but they must change as your business grows, as your business changes. We find it very concerning when companies will come to us. Some of them have gone from large down to small, or small and have become large, and they still continue to use the same policy or the same criteria, which no longer is true for their business. And therefore, we are literally operating on the rule of exceptions. And that, just make sure that it's a living document and communicate the criteria with the rest of your team, whether they're involved in BD or not involved in BD. They should understand the logic of why and how you are making these decisions, so that they can contribute to it and understand your logic. Government contracting, you've heard this, many of my peers will say it, it's really not a mystery, right? It's a game. It's a game you play like any other business that you conduct, and there are rules in that game. All you have to do is learn it and play it. For HUBZone companies, you do have certain rules that are in your favor, and you need to understand those. Make sure you're fully aware. Not that you are not. If you went through the trouble of being HUBZone certified, I'm sure you understand the advantages of that. But once you have understood the rules of the game, you need to be responsive. I'm sorry, is there a question?
No, I was laughing when you were making the comments, you were like, I'm sure you guys understand it. And I was like, some days I wonder if I understand it. They seem to be making stuff up as they go sometimes. So I'm dealing with a situation right now. They were like, I'm sure you guys understand it. I'm like, I don't know.
Well, let's just assume for the moment that we all do, right? So
as what we're read, but sometimes I think there's a few things where people just make things up as they go some days.
Well,
So
we just need to look, the rules are going to keep changing. But yeah, we need to learn them, and we need to know how to play within those rules, because that's where success comes in. If you don't even understand the rules, you're going to be left out, and you're not going to take advantage of the benefits that the rules that are made in your favor. So it's important that we learn them as we change. But once you understand the rules of the game, it is incumbent upon the company, not the HUBZone Council, not Proposal Helper, not a third party. It is up to you as the business owners, as the businesses, to be responsive and participate. Especially when it comes to the sources sought and RFIs. I've heard many companies say, oh, no, it makes no difference. It's a waste of time. I don't want to respond to it. Look, we've seen successes come out of sources sought responses. You should respond to them. And we get contracting folks, we get program office folks saying we need companies to respond to those sources sought notices. The small business offices will tell you, if you don't respond, they really don't have the legs to stand on to advocate on your behalf, on the behalf of your socioeconomic criteria, or set aside to say, let's set this aside for HUBZone companies, because they don't get enough responses. I was at an Army and HBCU collaboration conference a couple of weeks ago, and the number one problem that the Army said they had is not that there are no funds for the HBCUs. The problem they have is HBCUs don't respond to these opportunities. That's the same thing we have heard from small business offices that say we don't get enough qualified HUBZone companies responding. And now that whole thing about quote unquote qualified makes it very subjective, but I'm going to talk about it in just in the next slide or two on how do you make sure that you are considered qualified. So sources sought responses, RFI responses, They do make a difference. You should respond to them. Don't ignore them. The average number of bids that a single award contract in the government receives, believe it or not, 3. If you can look this up on FPDS, FPDS tells you how many responses and offers they got. I'm not talking about the IDIQs. And there are certainly, you know, those that are very popular single award contracts that will have more. But on average, the government gets 3 responses to single award contracts on the small business side. So I should have qualified that. So, you know, your competition is not as vast as you think it is. And companies are all looking at each other going, well, there's an incumbent, I'll pass. Oh, I don't think I have this, I'll pass. HUBZone companies have a golden opportunity of forming and coming together, work together. Instead of working against each other and working separately, come together, form those CTAs, form those partnerships, and work together to go after these contracts. There was a bid that many years ago we worked on. Our client was going after it and was trying to put together a teaming strategy. It was set aside for, and that time it wasn't that you know, popular, but they were woman-owned, set aside, self-cert at the time. And we created a consortium of sorts, a team of only women-owned small business. And our proposal said, look, we're responding to a woman-owned set aside. We have brought together the most qualified women-owned small businesses in the industry to work together, not just to check box for you, but because we want to demonstrate that we have the capability to do it. And they were awarded that contract. And HUBZone companies have that opportunity to do it too. You have to work together. But it starts with responding to the sources sought and RFI notices. Don't ignore those.
Rena, got one question here. If you could just, while we're talking about rules there, can you share some of the rules? The question is, can you share some of the rules that some newer HUBZone companies might not know?
Different conversation, different day. I'm sorry. There's like, you know, all kinds of, when I say rules of playing with the government, you know, are you registered correctly? Have you certified yourself? Do you understand what your HUBZone set aside brings to you? And I'm happy to, you know, have a one-on-one conversation with that person. But in general, what I was trying to get at is not a rule for HUBZone companies or a company. I'm just saying that government contracting is rule-based. There are rules to do business with the government and understand those in a more generic sense.
And one more, this one might be directed here to Michelle. Can my HUBZone business location cover all of my state?
I think Rick needs to rephrase that a little bit because I'm not sure. So with your HUBZone certification, it's associated to the business itself. So if you are certified, any place in which that you work is going to be applicable because your company itself is certified. A lot of businesses that are participating in the program have multiple locations, but I'm not really sure if that's the question you're asking, Rick. Can you provide some more clarification just to make sure that I'm answering what you're asking?
Yes, thank you very much for reading the question. And thank you all, the panel, for bringing the vital information. I have a new business location situated in a HUBZone in Griffin, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm positioned close to Atlanta and also an hour away from Warner Robins Air Force Base.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to understand how can, I'm working with veterans, bringing them together, like the lady was just saying, as far as forming a partnership, and just trying to find out, can we really stay at that location and then apply for work all over the state?
Yes, you can, but I want to make sure that I understand all the nuances to your question. So I'm going to put my email in the chat box because I want to make sure that I give you adequate time to explain your particular circumstances. Because I feel like there's a couple more things in there that I'm missing some information for. And I'm one of those people, I don't like to just speak until I know all of it because I don't want that to negatively impact you. So I'm going to put my comments in there, and I think we should schedule, because I'm actually going to be in Atlanta for the HHS event. If you guys, the registration's still open. So Rick, if you're close to Atlanta, April 2nd
Ma'am.
and 3rd, HHS has an event. It is free. I'll put the link in there. I'll be speaking, and then me and you could carve out some time to really chat this out.
Thank you.
All right, I'll put that in there and my email address, but I want to keep letting Arena and Kyle, because they got a lot of good tidbits here. And then if we get to the end of it with the FAQ, if there is any questions about HUBZone specifically, I'm happy to answer them, but I want to let them get through this presentation first, guys. So just, you can put them in the chat box and, or even email me directly, not a problem. So.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Michelle. And yeah, thank you for asking those questions and engaging. If there's something very specific, obviously we can take that offline. But that's, speaking of rules, right? I mean, your company is HUBZone certified. You can bid on a HUBZone opportunity anywhere in the country, as long as you meet the HUBZone requirements and you remain certified. If that opportunity is set aside, the work you're doing may not even be in the HUBZone. The place of performance may not be a HUBZone location. Doesn't matter. It's set aside. It's the certification goes with your company, not with the contract or the place of performance. All right, so let me continue on here. As I said, I hear a lot, oh, I'd never get a response. Why should I waste time responding to sources sought? I really want to emphasize, just because you didn't hear from the contracting shop, the day you responded to the sources sought, or the week or the month or even the year that you responded to that sources sought, does not mean that there is no interest. We have been very successful in helping companies respond to sources sought, meaningfully respond to sources sought, and that's what I'm going to talk about here, or in this slide. Meaningfully respond to sources sought, and then what do you do after? How do you get those get the interest of the government to consider you for a potential sole source? Or even if it's a competitive, we have seen by invite only RFPs coming out, and they were sent to our clients because of the response they saw in the sources sought. So first of all, this may seem so trivial and so basic. Read. We can't get people to read anymore, but read the requirements. What is required? Does your company have the ability to do the work? If you can do 50% of the work, 30% of the work, 70% of the work, it does not matter. The point is, can you do any portion of that work, and is it of interest to you? Especially at the sources sought stage. A lot of companies shy away by saying, well, I can't do all of this, so I'm not even going to respond. That's not what the government is asking or seeking when they're asking for your interest in the market survey that they're doing. What they're looking to you is saying, or companies will say, well, I don't have time to put together a team. You don't have to. It's sources sought, it's RFI, it's market research stage. What you should do is respond to the portions that are relevant to your capabilities, read that carefully, and tell the government that we're interested in bidding when this thing comes out. Here's what we are able to do. And wherever we have gaps in our capabilities, we plan to create a team. We plan to put together a consortium, whatever you might deem appropriate as a strategy, right? You want to communicate that with the government, let them know. You do not need to respond to every single requirement at market survey or sources sought stage, but don't let that deter you from responding. Please respond. Engage with the government folks. Now, how do you engage? Doesn't mean you're going to pick up the phone and start explaining your capabilities. That's not what we're saying. But we find that people who respond to the RFI strictly based on those 5 questions the government might ask, or the form that the GSA, folks have been making us fill out to express interest. That's not how you engage the client. What we like to do in our sources sought is treat it like a proposal, a mini proposal. It doesn't have to be as involved, but we look and read the PWS very carefully and come up with very well thought out recommendations to the government of what more should they include What information will help you build a better solution? How can I help you solve your problem that you currently have by reading the PWS and putting that in writing, even though the RFI template never asked you for it? Remember, there's no compliance when it comes to a sources sought response. Don't worry about, but they didn't ask for it. They didn't ask for it because they didn't think about it. You give them what they've asked for, but then take it a step forward and engage them. We actually, in all our sources sought notices and responses, include a section that says recommendations to improve PWS, recommendations to improve SOW. We put that in all our sources sought responses. Why? Because once you send that in, normally, if you have responded to the 5 questions the government asks you, and I'm saying 5, but the basic things that the government has asked you, the small business office is happy. They've checked the box. They say, oh yeah, we got HUBZone companies to respond. We should make recommendation to set this thing aside to HUBZone. But you never got beyond the small business office. If you take the time to say recommendations to improve the PWS, recommendations to improve your SOW, guess what? The small business office does not now keep that response with themselves. They're going to move you on and share your response with the program office. Suggest those improvements. Engage and suggest improvements in your responses. That's when you get attention from the government. That's when you get, hey, you know what? I got money to spend. I don't have time to put out an RFP. Let's call this company that took the time to read my PWS and gave me recommendations on how to improve it. They seem like a company who put in the effort. Let's call and talk to them. Again, there are no guarantees that you'll get a contract out of it, but you will get the attention of the program office. We have also been able to use that mechanism to insert requirements that eventually showed up in the RFP. And that's where, you know, when you wire the opportunity, when you put something in there that only you are able to respond to, that you're able to get a competitive advantage over others. You're able to do that very tactfully if you are willing to put the effort up front. And so we do recommend you do that, respond to the sources sought, but don't limit yourself to the questions that the government has asked. Go beyond that. Suggest and engage with the program office and try to get your solution interjected into the requirements. And then once you have responded to the sources sought notice, you need to follow through and follow up. I cannot tell you how many companies we see that say, oh yeah, we did respond to that sources sought. I don't know whatever happened about it. Or, you know, did we even respond to that sources sought? I don't know. I didn't bother keeping track. Keep track of it. It is part of your business development process. It's like I say, be consistent in your persistence. You have to be persistent. Just because you never hear from that office does not mean that you stop engaging them, that you stop following up with them. And if the same person that you're calling, you are emailing is being non-responsive, find other contacts in the government to circumvent and get around and eventually to that person. Now, the bottom line may be they might come back and say, well, I haven't heard anything from the program office. I don't know what happened. Well, that's a way for you to then say, who else can I talk to? How may I get more information because my company put in the effort to respond to the sources sought and we'd like to engage with the program office. Can you please give me the name of the person? I'll take the time to call them. Don't be afraid to do that. I think part of the problem in knowing the rules is we self-impose restrictions on ourselves on how we engage with the government. Now, I'm not saying be belligerent or, you know, be a pest to that person, but they're required. They are required to be responsive to the contracting community. It's ask politely, ask consistently, don't give up. And, you know, take it, you should really ask them for that information. And if that person is not giving it to you, they're not the only ones who rule that agency. There are other people. Go to other people. But you do need to be persistent and follow up on your response and get, as much as possible, try and get an introduction or at least a meeting with the program office. So all to say that this is a long sales cycle. If you're new in the game, if you're new to government contracting, please, I'm sure you've heard of this, but don't expect contracts to turn around in a week or a month. They do take time. So it's a long sales lead cycle. But once you do get that sale, the rewards are worth it. All right, so now you've responded to the sources sought. You're continuing to follow up. You're being persistent, trying to get a meeting and walk the halls and do what you need to do. What do you do in the meantime? Right? We find that companies just wait. They wait around and they go, oh, well, we'll see whenever the RFP comes out, then we'll think about, what we want to do. We responded to the sources sought. It's off my desk. Now I'll think about the next one. And they never go back to say, but why? What do I do with this thing that it's an opportunity in hand? Part of it that we see is a fear of making that bid decision. A lot of companies, especially small business, and I know it's expensive. Writing proposals, doing that BD capture work is not inexpensive. We know that. But the fear of making a bid decision really puts small businesses at a disadvantage. This is where my experience working for the larger companies helped me understand the difference of how is it that these large businesses are able to do what they do, shape it, influence it, win the bids that they do, is because they're not afraid to make bid decisions. Why are they not afraid to make that bid decision? Because they have a consistent BD and decision-making process to guide them. And so it goes back to what I said at the beginning. Have a consistent process to guide your decision-making, and then don't be fearful to make that decision. So what are we looking for? You've submitted your sources sought response. Continue to do your homework and make sure that it is a real opportunity. That, is this a recompete? Have they changed the requirements a little bit? Who is the incumbent? The other thing is, just because there is an incumbent does not necessarily mean that you should not bid on it. We hear that a lot. Oh, but there's an incumbent. I don't want to bid on it. I'll only bid on new work. Well, we are in continuing resolution. There's little to no new work. There's going to be an incumbent. And even if the government says it's a new opportunity, very likely that the scope has changed and therefore they're calling it new opportunity. But there must be some company doing a portion of that work. And that's part of our BD capture service that we do, is go in and try to uncover and connect these dots to say, is this a real opportunity? Is there funding behind it? Is this being done by somebody else, a portion of it, whole of it, and the government has slightly changed the requirements? What is going on? So do your homework, find out if it is a real opportunity. Will the need remain? For example, if you're a construction company and the government wanted a rec center built, well, will that come up for recompete? It's built, it's done. So, will that need remain? The need may remain, but in a different format. So the building is built, now it needs to be maintained. So the scope is going to be changed. The system was built. It took them 5 years, system got built. It's going to go into O&M. There's no new development that's going to happen. It's operationalized. So you need to understand, yes, will this need remain, and in what capacity will I be able to continue the support? Do you have the elements needed to win? Right? Are you willing to make that investment in finding the key personnel? Are you willing to do that early recruiting? Recruiting is always ignored till the very end. And what I found, what large businesses do well is recruit those folks who have worked on the contracts, bring them on as consultants, invest in the capture in that way versus paying consultants who claim to have a Rolodex and walk the halls. They use different strategies and put those elements in place to get intel, to build a winning strategy. Do you have those elements in place? Are you able to close the gaps through teaming? Have you started talking to teaming partners? You have done your own gap analysis. So you do all these things early before the RFP comes out. Don't wait. But the first and most important thing is you must verify that the opportunity you're willing to invest in is a real opportunity. And then, of course, are you willing to invest in capture? Are you willing to make that kind of dollar commitment, or do you just want to wait for the RFP to come out and then simply respond to it? This is where and why companies see that their win ratios are very low, is because they're saying, I don't have the dollar to, I don't have the money to invest right now. I'm going to wait till the RFP comes out and I'll put the proposal together. It's really, it's penny wise, pound foolish. You're putting good money after bad, because you could have invested early in capture, spent less on proposals because you've done a lot of the homework ahead of time. So consider coming up with a capture investment and to prepare yourself and do it early. And really, by the time the final RFP comes out, an ideal situation is that you already have your first draft of the proposal prepared. That should be an ideal situation for you, meaning you've done the due diligence, you've done your homework, you've done the solutioning, you've figured out what your win themes and discriminators are going to be, and then ready for that final RFP to drop. It should not, once the final RFP comes out, you really should be in red team, what we call review number 2, the flushed out, already once reviewed mode, not starting your teaming process or starting to discuss the strategizing and solutioning once the RFP is dropped. All right, common pitfalls in the bidding roadmap. What we find companies doing, you're using one single person to build your proposals, and you expect that person to be the proposal manager and manage the whole process, data calls, all the good stuff, be the writer, be the editor, be the graphics person. You're expecting too much out of one person. It leads to that person can probably work on, even if you do find someone who can do all of it, not very well in any of the areas, but if you do, they can, very likely work on 1 or 2 proposals at a time. RFPs come out, and if your pipeline is robust, multiple RFPs come out at the same time, and now you're starting to either pile on way too much work on that one consultant, or you're making a no-bid decision after months of capture effort, not because you're not ready and prepared, but you have a capacity issue. Again, as I mentioned, ideally a person, one person, if they're doing everything on a proposal, which they shouldn't, but if they are, 1, maybe 2 proposals and they'll do okay. But anything beyond that, you're going to start seeing quality issues. There are security issues. Using consultants that are not, work as free agents, we have seen that they have used the same proposal content from one client's proposal into another. They're emailing files to each other. These are all security issues, and something that as government contractors working with CUI information or even public domain information, you should be worried about and concerned about that. Does the company have the elements in place to secure your proprietary data? And intensity versus consistency issue. Proposals start coming out. Initially, the consultants or even you are excited and you're wanting to bid on everything. And then you just fizzle out and say, well, I used up all my BNP dollars in the first 2. I don't have money left, or don't have bandwidth to do any more. And there's no consistency in your bidding process. That hurts your company. So these are the pitfalls to avoid. And don't expect one person to do everything. The combination of skill sets is vastly different. You don't need a senior proposal manager trying to be your solution architect and a solution architect trying to be your editor. That's just unfair to the person who is doing it. They won't be able to apply themselves as they need to be, tapping into their skills and strengths, and it will do injustice to your proposal. Paying by the hour, again, there are different payment models, whatever you're comfortable with. But what we have seen is companies trying to say, oh, I'll pay this writer for 5 hours and I'll get a graphics person for 3 hours and I'll get an editor for 2 hours. Now you are in the business of managing the manager, right? So I would say, no, don't manage the manager. Let the proposal manager pull a team together, let them do their job. Your focus is delivery. You should be thinking about, how am I going to deliver and make money on this contract, not managing the proposal. You should be worried about managing the contract. Call it out when it needs to, as you are reading that RFP. When you see requirements, or even in the sources sought, when you see requirements that are too restrictive, that favors one company over the other, you need to call it out. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Do it respectfully, but point out to the government that they are being overly restrictive. And that's when you reach out to your HUBZone council. Make them aware, but do your homework. They're not going to read this statement of work and try and figure out, what do you mean it's restrictive, right? You need to do your homework and say, paragraph this says that this is required. We believe this is overly restrictive because we request the government remove this restriction. Or sometimes you'll see in the SOW, it will say that the contractor must bring 5 years of experience developing a system that was developed for that specific agency. So you couldn't have gained that experience anywhere else unless you are the incumbent. Call them out on it. Include the small business office, include the contracting officer, point it out to them. It's not always the case that they want it wired. It's because they have probably copied and pasted that thing from the previous statement of work. But you do need to call it out when it needs to be and do it respectfully. Focus on your core mission, not the proposal and the sales process. That doesn't mean you don't oversee the process, but let the experts who know what they're doing and how to do it help you. Find and surround yourself with the right team of people to help you and extend your reach and augment your own staff. Again, I cannot stress enough, you must respond to those sources sought notices. I mean, every year, I think this number doesn't sound like a huge number, but out of pure response to sources sought, every year, we've been able to help at least 2 or 3 clients get a sole source award out of it. And that's not easy to do, especially because, all you did was respond to the sources sought notice. But then we work it, and we are very persistent, and we represent and follow up with the government as part of our BD service. That's what we do. We're trying to navigate and see who can we meet, how can we get meetings for our client, so that when they are asked that question, did you respond to the sources sought? Yes, we did. And we gave you recommendations. We'd like to talk about that. And sole source awards do come out of that. So as I said, follow up, follow through. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I don't know if there are any questions, but I think just in the nick of time. Kyle, Michelle, any questions that I need to answer?
So I really wanted to pinpoint on the component, and I'd love if Shirley could chime in as well, is about where you were talking about accountability when we have those opportunities that appear as if that they're geared. And following up, I was curious if Shirley would share an example, or I mean, I know there's been instances where I've had members of our organization have written language, or it was almost like a line that was put into the proposal, and I'm like, did you just accidentally copy and paste and forget to take it out? And sometimes I think that does happen, but I've had successes where they've pulled it off and they've made those adjustments. But Shirley, do you have any feedback that you want to share about the processes of RFIs, how it's evolved, but also what strategies can be implemented or what you've done in your experience?
Yes, definitely. Great presentation, Rena, by the way. I mean, I think there's a lot of key information in there that's really critical, especially for companies that are trying to enter into the federal marketplace. One of the things that with this service is that if you are a younger company in the federal marketplace, services like Rena provides you the opportunity to go through a process, even if you don't use it long term. It allows you to see a process that leads to results. And that if you within your own company can develop these processes or even enhance your processes with what you have working with them, because I have had experience and being as the board chair in the company, I've been doing federal contracting for over 30 years. And basically I went through this process because I wanted to see what process their company went before we would ever, consider working with it with the HUBZone Council. And I will tell you that the process was very, very detailed. It was thorough. They worked very closely with the company. They worked as much or as little with you as you felt comfortable with. But I think that the experience is well worth it just to understand how a process should work from start to finish. Secondly, as far as the RFI, yeah, the RFI process has changed over the years, considerably. But it is as much as small businesses hate to respond to it because they think that they don't have the bandwidth, it is very important for helping us to gauge which ones are going. And especially with us trying to get more and more set-asides with to be set aside as a HUBZone set aside. So it is critical for you to find these opportunities, respond to them, and to also call your competitors and get them to respond so that we can at least get them as HUBZone set-asides as well. So, Michelle, is that what you were looking for, or did you want some additional?
No, that is what I was looking for because I recognize that sometimes it is a little bit daunting. And like even when I first started playing in this space, I'm like, it just isn't, something's missing for me. And that's why, from an organizational perspective, a lot of us at the HUBZone Council are trying to band together to come up with a solution. And with our BD committee, we're going to try to collectively, using our partnership with Teaming Pro, to hold these agencies accountable, try to get the businesses to make sure they're responding. But then we have tangible evidence to support, like, hey, the rule of two was certainly met. So then when they still don't start setting it aside, that at least we have the evidence to support to justify. Oh, sorry. It's just one of those things that's always frustrated me.
Well, I do have a question for Rena and her team too, because I was not exposed to your side on the business development as far as the capture. Is that where you help stratify, strategize with the company to come up with their entire, portfolio, or do you work with a proposal by proposal or a solicitation by solicitation that they've identified?
No, so again, every company's requirement is different, and sorry for scrolling here. But so, we have two divisions in our company. On the BD side, we're doing the lead identification qualification. Does this lead even fit that, initial go, no-go criteria? So we sort of, if you're in the industry, gate one, we go through gate one before presenting, then we help strategize. Right, we're not just strategizing from how do I respond to the proposal, but how are we going to win this contract? What elements does this company need? Who do they need to talk to? Phone numbers, names of people. It doesn't always have to be government people. It could be who in the industry do we need to talk to? We are helping them come up with that strategy on their pipeline bids. And when those pipeline bids mature to a point, then we can say, hey, I think we need to start engaging proposal team into this, whether it is the client's proposal team or ours, and start then transferring that capture knowledge so it shows up in proposals. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
And a lot of the lot of times the companies are relying on the same person to do BD, to do capture, and then they pull them into proposals, expect them to be at every conference, and finish the proposal on time. That's just, it's an unrealistic expectation. And what we do is we tap into our, I very strongly believe in 6 degrees of separation. So we tap into our network to say, I'm not getting an answer from this person, but what is it that I need to find out? What intelligence am I looking for? If the government person is not responding to it, where else can I find that intelligence? It may be that we reach out to a former PM. It may be that we reach out to, a friend of a friend and say, hey, I know you were connected with this company, and try to gather that intelligence. So we do a lot of this capture work for companies.
Mhm. And you do it in coordination with the company really well as well. So it's almost like a training opportunity that you're taking them through while you're doing it also.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up, because part of our mission is we don't want to just fish. We want to teach you how to fish. We want to mature your processes, because the more you know, honestly, the better client you are for us. We're not having to train you every single day, but initially, as we are doing it, we share and are very transparent on how we do it, why we do it, how you can do it, the points of contacts that we gather. We're sharing those with you. Even the teaming connections that we make warm introductions, and we tell those companies, you should continue talking outside of us. We don't have to facilitate. You might come across opportunities. Feel free to talk to each other. It's your connection now. And so, yes, we do like that aspect of training and maturing the company's process. All right. Well, I appreciate the questions. If there are none, I guess we have come to the end of our presentation.
Thank you.
Well, I'm
Well,
very grateful that you guys did this here today, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys with coming up with a strategy alongside the partners with Teaming Pro. So I do hope that the HUBZone community, you stay tuned, because there is going to be some stuff that's coming down the pike that we'll be working with Proposal Helpers to try to tackle this issue, to kind of, come up with a more standardized approach and figure out how we can start making those set-asides end up on that acquisition forecast. Because for some reason I just think they forgot how to spell it. But I don't see a lot of set asides on any of these forecasts these days. So, I'm excited to try to, get those little words changed. I'm like, here you guys go. I know you know how to use that small business and open competition. You certainly know how to use that 8A. But let's start jumping in some hub zones and veteran owned and women owned set asides on those forecasts as well. So I believe with this Tiger team, we're definitely going to make it happen. So for any of you guys that are struggling to try to keep up with these proposals or the RFIs, they provide a great cost-effective solution, and I definitely think you should check out their website. I've had small businesses in our network check it out, including Shirley herself, to make sure that these guys are definitely, up to the task, and they come with her approval. So, and she is not easy to please, I'm going to tell you right now. So.
Well, we appreciate that very much. Sorry, go ahead, Shirley.
No, and I'm just laughing.
She was giggling at me, not easy to please, as an accountant and somebody that's working in this world for many, many years. Yeah, she's definitely one that knows the trade, but again, there's only so many hours in the day. So when you outsource to other things, it's not that easy with to get outsourced proposal support, because you as a business are articulating what makes you unique and why you're well positioned, and it's hard for a third party to capture that. So when you have a group of individuals that have a way of doing it, you definitely worth the dollar.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to say, Michelle, is, we have our clients ask us, well, why don't you bid on these things also if you can write proposals that well? And you know what I say? I love what I do. I have no interest in going and doing what you do. You are good at your business. I'm good at my business. Let's just work together and help each other win.
Exactly. I play in this space, but there's no part of me that ever wants to that I want to write a proposal, and nobody wants to read one that I wrote. Like, I'll give you the technical, but just know that it's probably going to be on page 4 is where you'll see your first period. Okay. I know my strengths. Proposal
No.
writing isn't one of them.
Well,
So
again,
listen, well, thank
you know,
you guys.
Michelle and Shirley, I really want to thank you all for this opportunity to present to the HUBZone companies and others who joined. Thank you for joining. And I hope you all
We
had
did
a
have
great
one
time
question in
networking.
there before we jump off from TAC.
Oh,
TAC, we actually we're talking with Teaming Pro, and we're going to try to run it as a pilot. It's still very infancy stages. We're going to try to identify a core industry sector and try to create groups of businesses that target specific. So we're going to try it small, but Teaming Pro is a B2B tool and is a CRM component. And we're going to identify potential opportunities, and we're going to make sure that we do targeted outreach to the companies within the member portfolio that align, encourage them to respond and play the thing of, you know, the best HUBZone wins, but we're going to capture the information of those that responded. Now, the one area in which that I saw a weakness in our proposal is that, you know, how do we kind of ensure that the business's responses are technically acceptable? And that's where Proposal Helper came in, because they say that one of the services they provide is they can do like almost like templated RFIs to kind of fill in the blank. Because I was like, hey, you know, these are clients and, you know, where's that conflict? But they actually had a really good solution for how that we could have these swim lanes. So we're still in the infancy stages of trying to work it all out. But as this starts to evolve, we are going to be reaching out to members of the organization to talk to them about it. And right before the call, I was talking to them and I said, hey, I really hope by the time we get to the conference that we have something in place so we can collect the feedback from, you know, other council members, or even be able to have something tangible to produce like, hey, was this an effective approach? So just stay tuned, guys. And we will be reaching out probably in the next couple weeks, collecting feedback. But all of us are like, we're going to do this. Yes.
Yeah, we're up for the challenge.
Yeah.
Well,
He
Great.
says that now. I think he's going to regret it, but I'm going to go with it.
we look forward to seeing everyone at the HUBZone conference in July and meeting everyone in person. So hopefully you all will make it out there. It's a great conference. We never miss it.
And thank you, TAC. Consider yourself volunteered. All right. Bye,
All right.
everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
y'all.
Bye-bye.